Is exercise or the placebo effect a more significant factor on the pain tolerance of an individual? What is pain tolerance? Pain tolerance is defined as the limit of pain an individual can tolerate. Pain is an inevitable human experience and cannot be avoided. Someone's tolerance is affected by a wide variety of factors. Two of these factors are exercise and the placebo effect. Few studies have examined the significance of these factors in comparison to one another. This study aims to determine whether exercise or the placebo effect has a more significant effect on the pain tolerance of an individual. The results of the study are significant because they will add evidence to the existing pool of data on how to deal with pain. Increased pain tolerance allows those who are dealing with pain to reduce their suffering. Determining what factors are the most effective in increasing pain tolerance can give insight into how people suffering from pain conditions can better deal with their situation. As I first began to research the pain tolerance of an individual, I found that there was immense variability in an individual's tolerance threshold. Each individual has a different measure of tolerance, which can be affected by various factors such as genetics, ethnicity, gender, experience, and mental state. From a study conducted by Assad Panuala, it was concluded that the female gender, Asian race, fear of pain, and catastrophizing were identified as significant factors to decrease pain tolerance. Anxiety, relaxation, and cognitive rehearsal are other mental factors that are important to know. In a study done by Mary Bobby, each of these three cognitive functions, when stimulated, increased pain tolerance in comparison to the control group. Relaxation had the strongest effect of the three. In another study conducted by Robert Edwards, it was concluded that ethnicity does have an effect on pain tolerance and should therefore be accounted for in the predicting of an individual's pain tolerance. There has also been a noted difference in pain tolerance between athletes and non-athletes. In another study conducted, the pain threshold of non-athletes was not comparably different than that of athletes, but the athletes were able to tolerate much more pain than the non-athletes. One of the factors to the variability in pain tolerance that I'm focusing on is exercise. To compare the effects of exercise to the placebo effect, the effect of exercise on pain tolerance must be understood. Background information from Southside pain specialists show that consistent aerobic activity can increase pain tolerance and decrease pain perception. It was also proven that yoga with breathing exercises, meditation, and mental training made subjects more able to tolerate pain. Pain involves both physical and emotional receptors, which makes it hard to control the pain inflicted on a person. However, exercise is a method that will allow someone to increase their tolerance. Placebo is the other pain tolerance factor that will be used in my study. The effect of placebo on an individual's pain tolerance must be understood to effectively compare it to the effect of exercise. Studies have been able to show that the placebo effect engages systems such as the endogenous opioid, vasopressin, and dopamine systems. A study conducted by Peter Stats to measure the effects of suggestion/placebo on pain found an increase in the participants' pain tolerance with the placebo. A negative placebo decreases a patient's pain tolerance, while a positive placebo increases a patient's pain tolerance. My methodology. The most effective way to conclude which factor is more effective in increasing pain tolerance is with human subjects and the cold water hand submersion test. I began this process by obtaining subjects who volunteered to participate in the experiment. Then I informed the patients of the possible harm that could come from putting their hand in ice water. Each subject also filled a permission form to partake in the study and for the results to be used in this research paper. The method that I'm using to measure pain is relatively simple. It begins with the subject sticking their hand in a bucket of water filled with ice. A timer is set, and then the subjects report when they begin to feel pain. This time is recorded. The subjects keep their hand in the ice water until the pain becomes unbearable. When they remove their hand from the water, the timer is stopped. The temperature of the ice water is an extremely important factor for this experiment. Before I began this experiment, I had to add and remove ice to perfectly maintain the desired temperature. I used an electronic thermometer to measure the temperature of the water. For the study, the subjects partook in the cold water test 3 times on 3 different days. They do their tests on different days to ensure that the results aren't skewed by being exposed to cold water twice in a short period of time. The first test conducted is a control test. The initial temperature of the water was recorded and they were asked to submerge their hand. They then reported the time that they began to feel pain, and the time was recorded when they took their hand in the water. The second day of testing involved exercise as a factor. The process of the cold water test was the same as the first, however, the subject was instructed to use a 15-pound dumbbell to perform 30 bicep curls with the hand that they would submerge before they put their hand in the water. The purpose of the bicep curls was to stimulate activity. Doing a bicep curl used the muscles in the hand, forearm, and arm, and it brought blood to the hand. After this procedure, the results of the cold water test were recorded for each patient. The third day of testing focused on incorporating the factor of the placebo effect. The cold water test was the same as the first 2 days, and the temperature of the water was made to be the same as the past 2 tests for each patient. Before the patients submerged their hand in the water, they were told that the temperature of the water had been increased. They were instructed that this increase in water temperature would make it easier for them to stay in the water for longer, which would then increase their pain tolerance. This suggestion enacted the placebo effect. The time when the patients first felt pain and when they removed their hand from the water was recorded. The purpose of these time results was not to be used in the comparison against the other subjects, but rather in comparison to all of their 3 timed results from their tests. After completing all 3 days of the cold water submersion test, the results from each of the 7 subjects are shown here. The far right column is the duration until their hand was removed from the water. This is test 1 from the first day. This is the second day. As you can see on the right hand column, all of the results on that third or that fourth final column had increased, and this is test 3. The most effective way to compare the results of trial 2 and trial 3 is by calculating the percent increase in the patient's pain tolerance between trials 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. Using a percentage to calculate that increase is effective because of the widespread pain tolerances. It would not make sense to take the mean of the values in comparison to each of the subjects when some of the subjects have a much higher time for some of the trials. There were different temperatures used for some of the subjects, but the temperatures were kept the same for all of that subject's trials. This temperature difference between subjects will not affect the data analysis because the subject's results are being compared to their own trials to calculate their percentage increase of time. This table shows the percent increase in each subject's duration in the cold water. And then here are the statistics for the trial. Important notes. The first measurement recorded in each of the tests was a time until the subject felt pain from the ice water. This measurement was inconsistent across all the trials. Possible explanation for that is that feeling pain is very subjective, and will differ vastly from subject to subject. With the inconsistent results of this part of the experiment, this recorded data was deemed unnecessary in the research of the subject's pain tolerance. Another important note is that some of the subjects were able to spend much more time in the water than others. For example, subject 4 had a time of 7 minutes and 19 seconds in one of the trials, which was the longest recorded time in the entire experiment. Possible explanation for why this subject's results were so much greater than other subjects is that this subject reported ice fishing as an activity they partake in. This means that this subject has experience of putting their hand in cold water, so their tolerance to cold water may have increased. This should not affect the experiment results because this subject's pain tolerance is being measured with their own time results from all 3 trials. Subject 1 and 7 also reported high amounts of weekly exercise, and these subjects had high results of the experiment as well. This makes sense, however, though, because athletes tend to have higher pain tolerance than non-athletes. From trial 1 to trial 2, the mean percent increase in the duration that a subject was able to keep their hand in the water was 1.5598, or 155.98%. All the subjects had an increased time in the water compared to their time results from the control trial. From trial 1 to trial 3, the mean percent increase in the times was 1.1661, or 116.61%. Each of the subjects also had an increase of time in their test in trial 3 compared to their control trial. However, every subject had a less significant increase in trial 3 compared to their increase in trial 2, except for patient 7. Overall, trial 2 had higher timed results in this pain tolerance test. From the statistically analyzed data, trial 2 had a 39.33% greater increase in time results compared to trial 3. This means the factor used in this trial was more effective in increasing the pain tolerance of the subjects who partook in the test. In conclusion, the success of this experiment was surprising. Even though I had a small sample size for my testing, the results were still relatively consistent. All the subjects had an increased time for the second and third trials, which matched up with the existing data, showing that exercise and the placebo effect would increase pain tolerance. The most significant results come from the second trial, having higher results than the third trial. These results give evidence that the factor used in the second trial has a greater effect on increasing the pain tolerance of an individual. This means that the study gives evidence to support the claim that exercise is a more impactful factor for increasing pain tolerance than the placebo effect. These experiment results answer my research question, which was to determine whether exercise or the placebo effect has a more significant effect on the pain tolerance of an individual. A limitation of the study, as previously mentioned, is the small sample size. I was only able to conduct a study involving 7 subjects. This decreases the level of confidence of the accuracy of my study results in regards to the entire population. While the study results were conclusive in pointing out exercise is a more impactful factor, more research needs to be done by other researchers to make a confident claim regarding this research question. Unfortunately, my paper does not completely fill in the gap of research that I was focused on, but it does, however, give evidence to support future research in this area. I would suggest future researchers to use a larger pool of subjects. Overall, the main takeaway from this research experiment is that exercise may be more effective in increasing pain tolerance than the placebo effect is. Both of these factors, however, are likely to increase the pain tolerance of an individual when properly induced. That is all.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your process?
Yeah, when I was researching pain tolerance, I learned that I also had to research how to test pain tolerance. So this became a large portion of my research. And overall, it resulted in me deciding to use a cold water hand submersion test.
Okay. What would you say, you've already answered some of this, can you give me more about the limitations of your method or data and how it influences your new understanding?
Well, my main limitation of my study was the low amount of subjects. And because I had a low amount of subjects, it decreases the level of confidence in my results, which makes my research less likely to be fully accurate. But it still was pretty conclusive, my research. So my understanding is still semi-confident, even with that limitation.
Okay, thank you. The last one. What's the most important research skill you've developed as a result of the process, and how are you going to apply that to your future endeavors?
I would say that the most important research skill I learned was how to properly incorporate previous scholarly research into my own research. And this is something that I will use in every future research endeavor that I partake in, because it is important to use the existing data to help further my own understanding of the question that I'm trying to answer.
Okay, thank you.